we'll kick it off. So Gary Smith, presently you're in Florida. Is that true?
Negative. I am
Oh,
now in Savannah.
oh,
I
Savannah.
was in
Yeah,
Florida
that's
the
right.
other day.
Oh, the other day. Nice, nice. What kind of plane are you flying now?
We have a Citation 5 that's a 91 and a 2013 Beach Bear and G58 with NXI.
Nice. That's awesome. Sounds like a lot of
Yep.
fun. Let me ask you this: like, when you first got into flying, how did you get the flying bug?
Well, I bought a house within 3 miles of the airport and decided I needed to go find out what was going on at the airport. And that led me to getting my private, which I quickly realized that can't do much with a private unless it's a beautiful sunny day for 200 miles. So I got my instrument rating, which then led me to I should probably build some time, which got me my commercial rating. Um, and then I started looking into the future for what my next career would be, and I got my CFI, double I, and then got my MEI,
Nice,
which led me to building more time, starting to instruct, which got me my ATP.
nice.
Then I
Jeez.
started working with you,
Yeah.
which you helped me get my private helicopter, commercial helicopter, and then you abandoned ship on my CFI. You changed jobs.
I did, yeah, at that point. But you were pretty close, if I remember.
I drove you out of advance.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and congruently, like everybody I tell about you, like I always say that Gary, I taught him how to fly helicopters, but he taught me how to fly airplanes. Yeah, I
I
remember that.
did.
What when you were like, do you remember your first flight or your first series of flight? Like, what was it like for you taking the controls for the very first time?
Uh, it wasn't bad, but the previously to me moving up to having a house next to the airport in Frederick, I'd taken one or two lessons several years before that in a small little airplane with an instructor who wanted to show me more of what he could do than what I could do.
Oh,
And
sure.
it kind of put me off, and I kind of put it on the back burner till I moved up to Frederick. And I decided I'm going to try this again. And I walked into a flight school and said, I want to take lessons. And a guy basically, I think, did the OJ Simpson over the couch and shook my hand and said, "Hey, I want to help you get that goal." And I said, "Okay, uh, I'm looking for a low wing airplane, and I'm looking to go find out every maneuver I'm going to need to do before I waste all my money to see if it makes me sick or what." And he walked me through them, and I'm like, I think I can do this.
There you go. What when you say low wing aircraft, what did you start your training in then?
Started in a little 152,
Oh,
and
high wing aircraft.
it felt unstable and small to me.
Sure.
Felt like I was flying a lawnmower with wings,
It is.
and I was like, "Nah, I don't want to do that."
Yeah. No, I hear that. I remember flying George Boris's 152, and I
From
had
both seats.
yeah, I had to get 4 hours or something, or 3.5 hours or something like that for my night requirements for ATP. And so I took it from Leesburg Airport out to Winchester or something like that. And I was like, I was so large and the aircraft was so small. I was like flying, butt cheeks were on both seats. I had my left foot on the left rudder of the left side and the right foot on the right rudder on the right side. And I had the throttle in the middle. Yeah, it's a very small aircraft, the
And you
152.
got stuck in weather down there too,
I did.
remember?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh man, that was luckily I had three GPSs and an autopilot in a Cessna 152. So, I felt safe even in the inclement weather. So I had to file a flight plan or whatever to get back into Leesburg, but all right, whatever. Oh man. What do you remember the first flights that you took? Was that down in Gaithersburg or was that up in Frederick?
The first two that I ever took were in Gaithersburg.
Okay.
And then we moved to Frederick, and I figured out, let me pick this back up. And then I never put it back down.
Nice. Was that you were still a fireman at the time? Is that correct?
Yep.
Or
I
okay.
had worked 9 days a month,
Oh,
and
nice.
I need to fill the rest of my time with something.
There you go. There you go. That's awesome. And then along the way, correct me if I'm wrong, you owned a Navajo for a bit, or was that the first one you owned? Or what
So
did you do?
the first thing we did is once I got my private, I realized flying was going to be expensive. And we started talking to a couple of guys that were in flight training with me, and we decided that we needed to find a way to get it to be cheaper. And we decided that the best way to do that was to create a flying club. So we created the Condor Flying Club.
Ah, nice.
And
That's where they.
there were three of us that decided that we were going to bite the bullet, and we bought a Cherokee 1972 Cherokee 180.
All right.
And it was the chicken or the egg. We need more people, but we need a plane to make a club. So we bought that, and we built the club, I think, up to about 8-10 members.
Oh, nice. Just on the one plane, or did you get
Just on one plane?
Okay.
And then as time progressed, we wanted something that was going to be bigger and faster, but the insurance company wasn't going to, tear us up.
Yeah.
So we ended up with a Cherokee 6,
Okay.
300 horsepower, fixed gear. And we had that for a while, and then we expanded. So we had 2 planes, and we had 18 members. And the insurance almost doubled, if not more, onto the Cherokee 6 because they'd had some accidents in them.
Oh.
And we did the numbers and decided that we probably shouldn't keep the Cherokee 6. So we sold that. Some of the membership departed and weaned out, and we just went on from there. And in 2012, I got the phone call you never wanted from some newspaper that says, "Hey, we want your comments on the accident with your airplane." And I went, "What?"
Oh no.
Nothing about it. So then I started making phone calls and looking up to who had the airplane, and it, in fact, had been a fatal accident.
Oh,
And I'm like, "Uh-oh, now what do we do?"
jeez.
So we gathered as much information as we could, and we did everything. And a matter of fact, I was talking about this with somebody today. We had a guy in the club that was a engineer, and he actually drove all the way up to York, Pennsylvania, and walked and measured, did a bunch of stuff, pulled out the slide rules, and the witnesses said the airplane stalled. Well, it had vortex generators, and where it was to the left and behind, almost in a U-turn, and that's not a stall.
Yeah. Was
Well,
that on takeoff or on landing?
on landing.
Okay.
So we surmised a bunch of stuff, and we think it was a real nice guy, but we think he might have had either a cardiac or some kind of an episode. And when you have that, you potentially will pull your hands in closer to your body. And if you had the yoke in your hand, that would explain the hard left turn with the nose up.
Oh, geez.
But that's a surmise. The toxicology that was done shows trauma and enzymes that are similar to a heart attack. So you'll never really know unless they went deeper, and I don't think they did.
Yeah.
So the Condor Flying Club, with assistance of a good attorney, decided that we should refund everybody that was a member, and we did that, and we abolished the Condor Flying Club.
There you go. That was in 2012, you said?
Yep, 2012.
Oh, wow.
And we started the Frederick Aero Club.
Oh, okay. So now
took the proceeds. We took the proceeds. We divided up to everybody, and we said, "Hey, anybody want to start a flying club?" And we all raised our hands, and we put all our money together, and we bought a '82 Archer 2.
Oh,
That's
nice.
what we had.
You guys still have that?
Yep.
Nice. Out at Frederick Airport?
In a coveted hangar.
Oh, wow. What's the wait list for the hangars out there? Isn't it
10 years?
10 years. Jeez.
Yeah. 10 years.
Did they ever build more hangars down by RCNA or on the?
Nope.
No. Okay. Jeez, man. So we were working at Advance, we had that fatal accident in 2009, and then you had another one I didn't know about in 3 years later. Man, that's rough.
Wait, the 2009.
89 whiskey.
Yeah, that was in 9.
Yeah.
Huh. I thought
Because
it was like, it might
no,
have been. Yeah,
I,
it might have been in 9. Yeah, you're right. Well,
yeah,
you had the second one at advanced.
yeah, that was after I left though. That
Okay.
was
That was the day that we had got the word that
yeah.
all of the insurance and the workers' comp and all of that was all done, settled. Everybody's free and clear.
Yeah.
And 4 hours later, the that guy put his main gear through the rotor blades.
Uh, was it a Cirrus guy or something? Wasn't it?
Serious, because he pulled the chute.
Oh, geez. Yeah. Jeez.
So
What has been how about this? What has been your most memorable flight experience kind of throughout your aviation career?
well, I don't know, memorable, but I had bought an Aztec, 1969 Aztec, and I kept it at Hagerstown, and we took off out of that with my old instructor. And as we were climbing out and just turning from upwind to crosswind, about crosswind, the number 4 cylinder prematurely left the airplane. And I was like, And the first thought in my mind was, uh-oh, that's going to be expensive.
Yeah,
Was, we should
not I
probably
may
fly the
die.
airplane.
Yeah.
Well, I knew I wasn't going to die. We'd fly the airplane. Of course, the
Yeah.
instructor that was beside me wasn't sure about his dying. So he's a little bit, I'm like, look, you need to, 1, chill out, and 2, reach down and turn the fuel off on the left engine.
Yeah.
I'm flying the airplane and confirm it's the left engine, because it's between the seats and it could potentially be easy to grab the wrong engine.
Oh yeah, I remember
So,
the fuel shutoff valves down there.
yep. So
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
he shut that fuel off, and I called the tower and told him that I needed to land right away, and he had a couple in the pattern. So I need priority handling, and the instructor beside me is screaming, "Declare an emergency! Declare an emergency!" And I'm like, tower, yeah, and 9-4 Yankee, we're gonna take the option of the emergency now.
The
So
option.
let's take the option of the
The
emergency.
option of the emergency. Yeah. All right.
So he's like, "Do you want the equipment?" I'm like, "No, negative on the equipment.
Don't
Don't
roll the
need
trucks. Yeah.
Yeah, don't roll anything. God, they'll cover it in foam and it'll
Ugh.
totally inflame."
Shut down the entire airport for the
Yeah,
rest of the day. Yeah.
yeah. So we came around and we landed, and it was a left engine. So I
Okay.
made left turns really well, but right turns were a real problem.
Sure. 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 Yeah.
Made a bunch of left turns and came back to the active runway to cross it to get back to the hangars. And the tower goes, "So you can expedite your crossing." And I went, "Yeah, I'm not expediting anything with one engine. I'll wait."
You
So
can expedite this. Okay.
I can't expedite anything and run this thing in the grass. I mean, it was
Yeah.
rough.
Yeah. Oh
So
my gosh.
that was probably the most interesting flight I've had.
Oh yeah, no, that sounds like it. Do you think that landing with a single engine, like an engine out or whatever, was like one of the smoothest or best landings
Oh
that
yeah.
you've had?
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, it was a great landing. And the
Yeah.
tower later said that they just thought somebody got sick on the airplane. It wasn't until I turned final and saw one stowed and pieces of cowling flapping in the breeze that he's like, "Oh,
Oh, there might be something wrong.
yeah,
That cowling's not supposed to look like that.
yep,
I remember a story from you were talking about like you were flying during 9/11, right?
yes."
Yeah, tell me that story.
So at the time, I got a job doing some security computer stuff, cameras and all that, and I flew around with a guy that was the director of operations for a company, and we were going to Monroe, Louisiana. And 9/11, about 7:30 in the morning, we departed Frederick, and I figured somewhere along the way, usually somewhere in Alabama or something, I may stop for fuel, but no
Sure.
big deal. We were about 12,000 feet or so, and we're just putzing along, and Air Force One or Air Force Two passed underneath us, and then I heard them again on the radio. Didn't think much of it. We got almost to Tennessee, and ATC was shuffling people around and said something about ATC shutting down. And I thought to myself, huh, well, New York Center radar probably is going out. That's what it sounded like.
Sure.
And then I heard him say that ATC was shutting down.
Oof.
And I just looked at the guy next to me and I thought, why would they hold this kind of a drill on a Tuesday morning at 9 o'clock?
Yeah.
In my mind, it's a drill. Fire
Yeah.
department, it's going to be a drill. And we had no idea what was going on. And we just kind of kept, they didn't call us. We just kept putzing along. And the next thing you know, they finally called us and said, hey, what are your intentions? I said, well, we're IFR to Monroe. And
Yeah, we're going to continue
direct.
on.
We were
Yeah.
cleared direct. He goes, negative. You're going to need to set down. And I'm like, okay, how about Knoxville? Negative. Knoxville is full. Knoxville is full. What do you mean full?
What do you mean full?
I didn't ask that, but I'm thinking, what do you mean full?
Yeah.
I said, okay, well, how about Nashville? We'll continue to Nashville. No, you're too far out, and they're filling up too. Okay, I'm looking real quick on the map. How about Charleston, West Virginia? They're a quarter and 100, so you're not going to get in there, and we don't want you to go missed. Then they decided I had enough options that they gave me radar vectors and turned me back to Clarksburg, West Virginia.
Oh, geez.
So we're flying back to Clarksburg, West Virginia, and we're hearing all this traffic. I'm like,
Yeah.
doesn't make any sense. And it wasn't until we landed in Clarksburg, West Virginia, just in front of a commuter. And you want to talk about a bunch of strangers actually working together?
Hmm.
There was 4 rental cars in Clarksburg, West Virginia.
Hmm.
And all the people on the commuter, or a majority of them, northwest, east, and south. They all got in their things. Where do you live from here? Do you live north of here, south of here, west of here, east of here?
Jeez.
And they all got in the cars. And the guy that lived the furthest away was the one that had to return the rental car. And it was like, okay. And I guess everybody just threw money at the guy that had to return the rental car. I didn't ask.
Yeah.
And we're just standing around. We're looking at each other. And I'm like, well, and the cops finally decided, hey, why are these two guys not with the commuter? And they asked, because we're not on the commuter. It's like, what do you mean? It's like, we're over in that plane over there. Oh, well, where's your luggage? It's still in the plane.
Yeah.
You know, by this time we knew what was going on.
Oh, really? Okay. Was there like TV or something?
They rolled the TV into the hangar with the 30 people. And I'm like, oh, crap. Well, then my phone started blowing up. And I, finally got the wife to tell her that I was fine and we had been forced down in Clarksburg, and I call her later. And I said, okay. And then they decided that, oh, well, we're gonna need to evacuate the airport.
Oh, geez.
They took us to a hotel. And I'm like, I wonder how full this hotel is going to be. It was a Holiday Inn, I think.
Sure.
And I looked at my buddy I was with. I said, I'll go get our bags. You go get a room. So I very meticulously took everybody's bag out until he waved the room key at me. And
Nice.
we had a room, and we were literally stuck there for 4 days.
Oh, geez.
It wasn't until I happened to talk to one of the other guys in the firehouse, and he said, I'll come get you. I'm like, you know how long a drive that is? He goes, I love to drive. I'll come get you. I'm like, okay. So
he came down.
He drove back from Frederick, came and got us in Clarksburg, West Virginia. We drove home, dropped the other guy off in Hagerstown, and we waited a couple more days and drove his truck back out to the other guy I was with. We drove his truck back out to Clarksburg, got in the airplane at like 10 o'clock at night, and flew into Monroe, Louisiana.
Oh, wow. So you kept on going down.
They're looking at us like we were the exact first plane that ever landed there in a week.
You probably were.
We were, and we were probably one of the very last planes to actually land, because we were far enough away that we had to turn all the way back to Clarksburg, and it took us a while. We had a headwind.
Yeah. Jeez.
So,
holy cow. Yeah.
Yep. Fun of aviation.
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. All right, new question for you. If money and time aside, you had, a blank check, what aircraft would you want to fly, or what's on the bucket list to fly before you die?
You know, I don't know. I would think it would be something modern.
Okay.
I've had my fun of old stuff. I I have become gadgetaholic in airplanes. You know, I don't know that much about them, but I think something like a Gulfstream 550, 650 would be cool.
Sure.
Citation latitude or longitude. If money were, that'll get you in everywhere you want to go and everything.
Yeah.
It would probably be cool to maybe fly a 737 or a 787,
Sure.
but you're limited, and you're going to need to bring 200 of your closest friends.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. And
So
$250,000
I
just to
don't
refuel.
have 200 friends. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
money no object, but still to be reasonable.
Yeah.
My experiences with citations and assess the line of jets. So I would say, for what I know, a latitude or a longitude.
Sure.
I want something with thrust reversers. I want something that has long legs. I want something with an APU. Single point fueling, good avionics. Stuff
Yeah.
you learn about when you don't have it. I don't want
Yeah.
to have to put the hell hole and crawl through to disconnect the battery every time you land.
What aircraft do you have to do that for?
Citation 5.
Oh, really?
Most citations.
Oh, geez.
Yeah.
They don't have a battery disconnect easily
Yeah.
accessible
In the hell hole.
in the hellhole. It's just,
You open the baggage compartment, you lift the door, you lean in. If you're short, you can't reach it.
you have to like crawl in there.
Basically.
Mm. Yeah, geez. What about a Honda jet, or like the little small, like 4, 6 passenger jets? Have you any interest in those or no?
Well, I don't know that much about Honda jets,
Sure.
and what I've heard about the Vision jet has not all been positive, and that thing just doesn't have an appeal to me for the looks.
Oh, sure.
It's like an egg with wings.
It does look like an egg with wings. It's very, very true. Very true. Uh, let's see. What about on the helicopter side? Anything you'd want to fly before you die, or just stick to airplanes?
It'd be kind of cool to fly. Maybe a Dolphin or something like that.
Sure.
I flew at S-76 for about 10 minutes.
Oh yes, Scott
Yeah,
Stalker
the
and the
Salt in the Brown Eyes or whatever.
Golden Brunei. Yeah, 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 yeah. Gold
Yeah.
plated mag lights and gold
Yeah, I
plated.
was scared to death to buckle the seatbelt because I figured I'd scratch more off than I could make in a year.
Yeah, that's very true. Oh man. So over your career, how many check rides have you taken?
Oh God, I don't know. One private, commercial, CFI, double I, MEI, airplane, single engine, ATP, single engine. Over a dozen.
Yeah. All right.
More. I got 4 type ratings.
Nice. What are your type ratings in?
BE 300, BE 400, CE 500, and an MU something. It's not the
Oh,
MU.
nice.
It's the Mitsubishi equivalent to the Beach Jet.
Oh, cool. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Nice. What kind of tips, or for somebody that's never taken a check ride, or people that aren't as familiar with aviation as you, what kind of tips or advice would you give for check rides, or how to prepare, or kind of like, yeah, what kind of tips would you give for check rides?
Well, the first thing I'd say is study. The next thing is relax.
Sure.
The examiner will not bite, and if they do, you can sue
or get a
them.
bright or get a Breitling.
Yeah, that's a totally different story.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, not
Yeah.
for yeah.
But just know your stuff
Yeah.
and go through some mock. The best thing to do is go through somebody that kind of knows the examiner and go through mock check rides with them.
Yeah, that's
If
good.
you've got an instructor that's been around, they know what questions the examiner is going to ask.
Mhm.
They know the outline of the program, And if you go in, you're going to get in there, you're going to feel a lot more confident if this feels a little bit more familiar than this ominous check ride you built up in your mind with the FAA.
Yeah. Yeah. Have
So
you I've seen a couple of people do like there was an option many years ago to pay, rather than, like, this is going to date me a little bit, when I went for my like private helicopter check ride or whatever. I remember it was like $400, for the examiner fee, and there was an option from the examiner, probably just to get more money, but it was like, pay me $200 and I'll take you through the entire check ride as a mock check ride, so that it's kind of like a practice check ride. Have you experienced that, or have you ever
I have
or
heard
yeah.
of something like that, and I've always questioned the integrity of something like that.
Yeah, yeah, that's true.
It's one thing if you have an instructor and they've been around the field a while and
Yeah,
they know what the examiner is going to do. One of the important things is to do your homework for the instructor you pick.
yeah,
Not
that's true.
every instructor is for every student, and vice versa. And I think the other thing we do is a disservice to students is we take a brand new instructor that the ink's not dry and we put them with a private pilot
Yeah.
who's going to try to kill them. And
Yeah, yeah, right off the bat.
try to kill them from the time they put the key in to the time they pull the key out.
Yeah. Sometimes
And
they pull the key out when they shouldn't pull the key out.
yes, and I think it'd be smarter if you
Yeah,
took a brand new instructor and said, okay, here's a commercial student, go get them their commercial rating. They're more
yeah,
familiar with it. They've just completed it as an instructor,
yeah,
and there's less chance of somebody dying because at least the guy that's getting instruction can demonstrate that he's already flown the helicopter.
yeah, yeah. No, that's very true. I got to be honest though, like my thought process on that would, I mean, that's a very good idea, I think. But the students that have scared the most, like scared the crap out of me the most, has always been commercial students, because I, as an instructor, like I'm more relaxed. I'm like, this guy's got it. This guy's got it. And then all of a sudden he does something completely asinine and completely stupid. And you're just like, where did that come from and why did you do that, type of thing. Whereas in the
Yeah.
private guys, like I'm a little bit more vigilant, because it's like, hey, you're about to
Well, but
die.
a new instructor is going to be more vigilant because they're
Yeah,
scared. They're trying to figure out how to give instruction.
yeah, no, that I think there is some wisdom in that too.
But it is, you need to do your homework on an instructor versus just walking into a flight school and having somebody assign you an instructor.
Yeah,
Talk to
definitely.
people, talk to the other students that are
Yeah,
there. Oh yeah, this guy's great. Oh no, this one yells at me in the cockpit.
yeah.
If an instructor yells at you in the airplane, unless he thinks he's dying, you need to fire him.
Or unless your number four cylinder prematurely departed the aircraft.
Yeah, but I'm just
Yeah,
saying,
yeah,
you
yeah.
need to. There's absolutely no reason, and the learning goes to zero when somebody's screaming at you.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I've done check rides in the club and mock check rides and stage checks where the guy gets out of the airplane and goes, "You didn't yell at me once." I said, "You didn't try to kill me once. The only reason I would yell at you." He goes, "I almost didn't get my license because my instructor yelled
Mm.
at me the whole time." And I was like, "You should have fired your instructor after the second lesson."
Oh yeah, yeah. And I've heard horror stories of Fort Rucker, Alabama, specifically going through like military or army aviation training for the helicopter side. That just like little man syndrome, like shit rolls downhill, and like they're just yelling, screaming, and that was the way that a lot of people learned. Which, yeah, I think you're absolutely right. It
I
does
can
it.
see some of the guys at Advanced that went there doing that.
I don't know. Like Roland's the only guy that I know.
Yeah, that was the one I was thinking of,
Yeah,
but I
yeah.
won't say his name.
Yeah, yeah. No, he was I always, my perception of him, maybe I'm wrong, but my perception of him was always like he's very chill and relaxed. Like he had the I just retired from my 25-year career, 30-year career as a police officer, and I've seen some stuff, and I'm the happiest man in the world because I'm eating shrimp and steak while these other CFIs are eating ramen. And
Yeah.
talk about your experiences transitioning from fixed wing to helicopters. If you were to do it all over again, would you continue to do it that way, or would you start in helicopters, or I don't know, just talk about your experience.
I would have done it the way I did it. The biggest problem you have, and I think it goes both ways, because you can attest to this, is you know what you want it to do. You just can't figure out how to make it do it.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know what it's supposed to do, but it doesn't want to do what you want.
No, no, not at all. Not at all. It's like yeah, yeah, 100%. I remember actually flying with you a few times that I would try and stall the airplane. You know, when I was a helicopter pilot, flying with you in airplanes, just learning, I would like be on final and I'd be like, you know, trying to pull back and decelerate the airplane at the same rate that I would the helicopter. And you're like, no, 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 add
Yep,
power,
you
let's
can't
go.
hover.
What are you doing?
Airplanes don't hover.
Yeah, they don't hover. Oh yeah, okay. Yeah.
I think
Oh
all
man.
helicopters that transition to airplanes do that.
Yeah, yeah. Out of all of the airspace that you've flown in, you've pretty much flown probably, you know, significant portion of the country, if not the entire country, but majority of it on the East Coast, up and down. What is or what has been the most challenging airspace that you've flown in?
Inside the 10 mile of the FRZ.
FRZ, yeah. How come that was most challenging?
The paperwork,
Yeah,
and you had to know exactly, and you had to be very familiar with the area, because you had to know you can't cross this street, because from that inner, you need a cop on board, but you're okay. And you're in a helicopter, so you're not high up, because most of the time, this is back in the day when you go out and do photo missions.
yeah,
Nowadays, everybody has a drone and you don't have that. But
yeah.
you're trying to talk to the tower, who may or may not be able to hear you, and you need to know exactly where you're at all times.
Yeah, it's very true.
And thank goodness I did most of them through the county where I used to work, so I knew the 100 blocks and I knew that area.
Like
And
the
I
back
knew
of your hand.
I
Yeah,
knew where the highway was, and okay, we're not going past that bridge. Why? Because we don't have a cop on board and there's only two of us.
yeah.
So you get up to it, boy, and you turn right around. You do a nice pedal turn and make sure your tail, your rotor didn't
Oh
go
my
across
gosh.
that imaginary line.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I remember doing one photo mission down there in the Bell. And if you look at the chart, like the P-56 Bravo is kind of like this oblong, and then there's like this little cutout down at the bottom. And I had to basically bring the helicopter up and then pedal turn to start back, you know, south or in a southerly direction. And it was literally like, I cannot cross that street or I will get shot down. And I happened to
Right.
be doing this pedal turn, and I looked down and there was a parking garage with a Hummer with a Sam, like, and it was literally tracking me. And I'm like, oh shit, you know, like my heart was in my throat, like, oh my gosh. But yeah, from the pre-coordination standpoint, 100%, I could definitely see DC SFRA and flying down in DC. But I always liked it too from the standpoint, like, once you, like, you know, when I was down there, I would have the cop on board or whatever, and then once you were down there, it was like completely all professionals, because it was, you know, airlines coming in and out of Reagan, and then it was like DC Metro Police, what is what is it, Capitol Police or whatever, they had their helicopter, and then it was a MedStar back at the
Oh,
time.
you had MedStar, you had Capital, you had Eagle 1 and 2,
Yeah,
US Park.
yeah, and it was like everybody down there was like super professional, and you weren't down there. It wasn't like you having to deal with like Harry, you know, homeowner on a Sunday
Yeah.
afternoon, unless you got lost, like really lost. But like I felt it was always very professional, but it was an entire ass pain just to get down there, though. Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
100%. Jeez. What advice would you give, knowing everything that you know now? What advice would you give somebody like first starting out in helicopters, or first starting out in airplanes, or just first starting out wanting to learn how to fly? Like, if you were to do it all over again, how would you do it differently? Like, what advice would you give? Those type of things.
I got lucky that I found a decent instructor, but you need to find a good instructor, and
Yeah.
you need to find somebody that is not just going to be a time builder.
Mm,
If they're not willing to do ground with you, and obviously you got to pay them, but if they're not willing to do ground with you and spend that kind of time, you need to find a different instructor.
sure. Sure.
Um, and you need to find one you get along with.
Yeah.
You know, you got somebody that you don't get along with or whatever, or you don't communicate well with, you're wasting your money.
Yeah. It's valid. Definitely valid. What about for somebody to make a career out of it? It seems like there's a pretty kind of high barrier to entry. There's a lot of time that it takes, to get your private instrument commercial CFI, CFII, and whatnot. And then it's a lot of money too. What advice would you give, somebody that is looking to start out from a time and money standpoint?
Are we going helicopters or airplanes?
Either way, I think it's
Airplanes, I think, yes, anything is a commitment with money,
sure.
but there's a lot more options than there were 10 or 12 years ago for getting into airplanes. And I don't really know the helicopter industry that well, but the airlines are clamoring for people.
Oh, sure, yeah.
I get at least 2 emails a week of, hey, don't you want to come work here? Hey, don't you want a $25,000 signing bonus? Hey, don't you want to come here? And it's just the way it is.
Sure. Yeah.
Certainly if you have the ratings that they want, it's just going to be much easier. It's initially hard, and the way everybody does it is get your CFI and then build your time with students, but don't be one of those CFIs that's just a time builder.
Yeah.
Give students the value that they're paying for.
Oh yeah. And I think at the end of the day, like as flight instructors, like you got to remember, like you are in a customer service industry, like you are providing service to the public, and it is a free market. We like to think of ourselves as God's gift to aviation sometimes, but at the end of the day, like spend your dollars and your time and your money with like people that you want to spend it with. Don't spend it with the assholes.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
and that's the thing. The FAA does all this stuff about how to teach and hey, the personality of teaching and how to do all this. And they do nothing about how you're basically running your own little small business
Sure.
inside a bigger business.
Yeah.
Because you're going to make it and break it on the reputation that you build at the field where you're at.
Yeah.
And if you got a bad reputation, you will not get students.
Oh yeah, no, that's very true. Yeah, I do remember different flight instructors over the years having more students or less students, kind of depending on their personalities. Yeah, absolutely. All right, my final question, and this is a broad area. What is your favorite aviation related movie, or what is your favorite aviation movie in general?
There's only one.
Top Gun.
Dude, Top Gun. All right, Top Gun's number one.
All right, other than Top Gun.
Airplane.
Oh my gosh, Airplane. Surely you can't be serious.
Don't call me Shirley.
Well, Gary, thank you.
You like gladiator movies?
Joey, you ever been in a cockpit before? Joey, you like gladiator? Joey, you ever seen a grown man naked? All right. Well, Gary, thank you.
Remember our whole time in advance where we used to try to embed Top Gun calls into everything we did in the pattern?
I do remember that. Yeah.
Remember the time you almost died?
Nope, I have no idea what you're talking about. Nope,
we went up somewhere when I don't remember the guy's name, but he wasn't one of the sharpest tools in the drawer. He thought he had an issue and grounded the helicopter up in Pennsylvania somewhere.
Oh, yep, I remember.
You and I flew up in the 172, and you got the helicopter and came back. And you were below me and in front, and you're like, go ahead. You got plenty, I'm slow. And I'm like, no, I'm fine. I'll just stay here in case you have an issue. You're like, no, go ahead. And I'm like, I'm not leaving my wingman. And all of a sudden the helicopter starts going back before you go, you're going to make me laugh and then crash.
I had forgotten that. Oh man, I remember that. Oh, that was fun. Yeah. What was that airport that we used to land at in Pennsylvania, and they had a really good cafe right on the field. It was like kind of on I don't know, like a little bit of a hillside, or kind of, I don't know. A few times I would always stop there on our way back from doing like, photo missions or whatever up in New York or New Jersey, that type of thing. But anyways, I remember more than once I would like get like a big burger with French fries, and I would have like a food coma on the way back, and I'd be like, the winter time, the sun's beating, I got the strobe effect on the, because of the main rotor blades, and like my belly's full and cheeks are rosy because I got the cabin heat on, and I'm just sitting there just flying like, oh shit, I need to But Gary, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time.
All right, buddy.
This has been a lot of fun. So
Yeah, it
yeah.
has. Hope it
Uh,
helps.
oh yeah, no, absolutely. I think it has.